two Chalfonts. Weird, huh?
One take, one take, one take, one take.
My dear friends, this is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And let us now return once again to the great and majestic and mysterious world that is, of course, the world of Twin Peaks. And specifically, let us return to that world which is Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. So I have been carrying on these discussions sort of at an incremental pace on certain aspects of the film in a type of chronological order as they appear in terms of a sequence of the film. And now we are at a given part of the film following up on our previous conversation. So I'd like to continue on today, if that's okay with you, with that conversation on this great work, which is Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me from David Lynch. And again, like with the previous video discussions on this work and indeed on the past Twin Peaks series discussions, I want to say that just for your information, the topics or the points that I might bring up today on these Twin Peaks film Fire Walk with Me discussions might touch upon aspects or plot points or developments or situations that we have seen in, say, season 1 and or season 2, and indeed also the pilot of Twin Peaks, the series, because in terms of the chronological order of broadcast and release, as we know, the pilot and seasons 1 and 2 were broadcast, and then came the release of the film Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. So everything in terms of the pilot, seasons 1 and 2, might be things that I might talk about. So just in case, my dear friends, please, if you have not yet seen the pilot or season 1 or season 2, or the pilot and season 1 and season 2 of Twin Peaks, I strongly urge you to watch those first. And then you can watch Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. And then if you're still interested, you can come back to this channel and watch these videos on Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. Because again, I don't want to spoil the experience for anyone who has yet to see any of those episodes from the previous seasons of the pilot. But they are, or potentially are, significant, again, because of the broadcast or release order, how it turned out. And also, my dear friends, on the other side of the coin, I won't be directly referencing or mentioning anything in terms of any Twin Peaks story that has occurred or that has been released after Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. So let us save those discussions for another time. And indeed, there will be other times on this channel where we will have further discussions down the road about a lot of things Twin Peaks. So, but for the time being, let us focus on everything up to and including Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. And also, I should say on that note that, as always, I don't hold myself out at all to be any expert when it comes to Twin Peaks, the world of Twin Peaks. And that includes not being an expert in Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. I wish I were, but I'm not. But so that means I will get a lot of things wrong. I will miss things. I will say things that are inaccurate. I will try to correct the record where I can. But when it does happen, and I know it will happen, and I know it has happened before, I sincerely apologize. And I will try my best to remedy and rectify those where and when I can. But as the song goes, who knows where or when. But in fact, my dear friends, let us now turn our attention. Well, actually, no, let me say one other thing too before we go, which is go to the discussion in earnest, which is that although I'm not an expert, I can say that I am a fan of Twin Peaks, and I am a big fan of Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, and it is one of my hopes that that feeling that I have, that enthusiasm that I have, hopefully will show through over the course of these videos. If it doesn't show through, if I can't show successfully how much I really love these works, then that's on me, and I have to try to improve my communication skills. But one of my hopes is to try to show just how much I love this work, and so I will give it my best go, as it were. And with that, my dear friends, let us continue on with our discussions and specific discussions. So spoilers abound once again, but if that's okay with you, let us proceed. Okay, so if we recall from the last discussion, we were talking about the point where Philip Jeffries seems to have appeared and seems then to have disappeared. Or perhaps, according to Albert and what information he found, perhaps he was never there to begin with. Now, who knows? But in any event, it was the very memorable sequence involving Philip Jeffries. And in turn, we understand that Chester Desmond has disappeared. And so, therefore, we are now turning to the next sequence of the film, which is, we understand, sometime maybe immediately after those events that we had just seen, which is Dale Cooper now on the scene. And it seems that Dale Cooper is at Fat Trout Trailer Park. And it seems that way too because he's on the ground, it is outdoors, it's the trailer park, and he's talking with, and he identifies the Harry Dean Stanton character here as Carl. And then a little bit later in the sequence, he'll refer to him as Mr. Rod, and so we can take from that, therefore, that this is the character of Carl Rod. We had mentioned, of course, Carl Rod's name in our previous discussions on Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me, but here I think we can also see once again, yes, Carl Rod is his name, and Harry Dean Stanton. Just a word about Harry Dean Stanton, and just to see Harry Dean Stanton in this work. It's really incredible. There's a magical quality about Harry Dean Stanton, and there's a magical quality about Harry Dean Stanton and this world and David Lynch and Twin Peaks. It's just it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And of course, too, what's so great about, or another thing that's great about this, is we see more Dale Cooper. One of the things about Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me that we've seen thus far is, again, similarities and differences. It feels somewhat familiar, but at the same time, there are things that are feeling very unfamiliar and very new and fresh, and perhaps, yes, indeed, giving us a sense of dread or feeling on edge. What's going on here? Our perspectives are being, and essentially, to put it in one way, our perspectives on what we understood Twin Peaks to be, based on everything that we've seen in through the seasons. It seems to be quite challenged in many ways, which could be a good thing. It could be quite a complicated thing, of course, as well. But that goes to the many of the points that I was trying to raise throughout the discussions on this work thus far. But one of the things that could be said to be a source of quote unquote familiarity or comfort even is the presence of Dale Cooper. And so when we see Dale Cooper, we saw him in the previous sequence, of course, together with that lovely musical sting. And then now we see him in action. And so with the coat and everything, and we'll see a little bit of Diane as well. We'll see a little bit of Diane. I should expand on that. We will see a little bit of the interaction with Diane a little bit later in the sequence, of course. But these are some of the traits that, again, add a sense of familiarity. And it's adding a sense of familiarity for me with regard to one of the most important characters of Twin Peaks, and indeed perhaps one of the most important characters of the Lynch Frost canon, and indeed one of the most important characters of the Lynch filmography, portrayed by perhaps one of the most important actors, performers, and artists of this world and of this sort of performance history, as Kyle MacLachlan as Dale Cooper. And so this is indeed very exciting stuff. And to see Dale Cooper and Carl Rod together on screen like this is also very exciting. There's a sort of fireworks effect going on. And it's amazing. If it's in terms of the context of the sequence, it seems to be here, and then we go into another sequence quite after this. So it's quite a brief scene here, but nonetheless, this is really quite amazing indeed. So in terms of that sense of familiarity and closeness, and also differences and distance, do we get a lot of that? We've gotten a lot of that thus far. But in terms of those signals that show us a sense of familiarity, yes, Dale Cooper is here, and he is back in action. Perhaps in the grand scheme of things, in the context of this film, maybe not a lot of screen time thus far, but still, we get a little bit of that Dale Cooper magic, as it were, and it's really quite lovely. Not to take anything away, of course, from any of the other characters that we have met for the first time through the course of watching Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, as I've tried to mention before. There is a lot of greatness, and I love the new characters that we have met so far. But again, it's that thing about push and pull, similarities and difference, familiarity and unfamiliarity, and closeness and non-closeness, and the like, and existence and non-existence, and appearance and disappearance. And so, this is all going on at once. And indeed, perhaps too, when one might say that this sense of push and pull is happening within this very sequence as well, which is also one aspect which I would highlight for me anyway as being one of the dynamic, exciting parts that is everlasting and ever and ongoing throughout the watch of Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me for me. And indeed, also, perhaps upon watching this and returning to some of the earlier episodes or the earlier seasons, one gets a sense of that. It seems like it was there all along. That sense of divide, that sense of ambiguity because of push and pull, similarities and differences, things that seem to be the same, but maybe upon repeated action, they might be different going forward. And this is, I think, a very strong conceit that as I view this, I see more and more things that have already existed. That sense of repeated action, alternate universes, alternate realities, and the like, and similarities and differences, things that feel familiar but maybe are a little bit off, a little bit unsure as to where we are. This has always been there in terms of the world of Twin Peaks. And let's take a case in point here with this sequence with Dale Cooper going back to Fat Trout, right? Because we have seen Fat Trout already within the context of this film, have we not? We have seen Fat Trout, already actually a number of times, because Chet Desmond went to Fat Trout not once but twice, at least in the context of what we've seen in the film. And this is referred to somewhat by Carl as he is relating his story to Dale Cooper. And now we are back at Fat Trout for another time, this time in the hands of Dale Cooper's investigation. And so here, even within this context, we get a sense of repetition. We're going back to the same scene or the same place or the same environment. And each time it feels a little bit different. We may be in the trailer at one part, or we may go back and we may visit the outdoors, and we may go to a mound of earth under another trailer at another part. And then now we get Dale Cooper's perspective. And so here we have, within the same film, as an example, similarities and differences. Similarities and differences in terms of the similarities of the environment and the place, Fat Trout Trailer Park that we're talking about, Carl Rod and others. And also differences in terms of the perspectives, even the angles of the camera angles, and where the camera is focusing, and even the characters that are spearheading the investigations. On the one hand, we had Sam Stanley and Chet Desmond, of course, and then Chet Desmond, and then now we have Dale Cooper. So again, similarities and differences echo abound, even within the context of the short space of sequential order that we see within these minutes of Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. So it feels similar yet different. And I want to say too that there's a sense of the connections too with, quote unquote, the past and the future that we seem to be getting within the sequence. And let me give another example, which is we have, well, before we get to that, let's say that Carl Rod again recounts what he understands happened to Chet Desmond, or what he witnessed happened to Chet Desmond, what he said happened to Chet Desmond. We get a shot, of course, of the outside of the trailer of Teresa Banks with a number on the side there. I think the number is 19. Again, once again, numbers in Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me and Beyond seem to have, may or may not have significance. So let's keep that in mind just in case a number comes up. If you see any other numbers in Twin Peaks, always keep a note of it just in case. It might or might not come up. But you get a shot of the outside of the trailer, and then Carl Rod talking to Dale Cooper about what he said to and giving context to Deputy Cliff's trailer, which is in that direction. And so this is giving us, again, a sense of the geography, again, but from a different perspective in terms of camera angle. And then, of course, Dale Cooper is not walking towards any of one of those points, but he says he wants to go over here. And so this causes a sense of sort of consternation and perhaps confusion in a comical way on the part of Carl Rod, again, a very lovable character. And we go towards this place, which again seems familiar but different. This corner of the trailer park, which is now vacant. It seems to be a place, a mound of earth, perhaps. And it seems familiar to us. And then the more we look at this, the more we realize that, yes, we have seen this part of the trailer park before, but this time is Sans trailer. It had been with a trailer. And indeed, this looks like to be the place where Chet Desmond saw a trailer and saw under the trailer some kind of mound of earth and perhaps a ring, and he tried to reach under for it. Remember that part? It seems to be this is the same plot of Space, this time without a trailer there. Now, again, similarities and differences. It looks the same, but it's of course different because there's no trailer there. And two, it's interesting because, it's interesting for a number of reasons, one of which is remember that Chet Desmond before, he seemed to have perhaps this sense, the sixth sense or the second sight or whatever you want to call it, or some kind of intuition that made him go the opposite direction from, say, Deputy Cliff's trailer. It made him go in a different direction over there. Remember, he looked up and there was the telephone pole, the electricity wires, and he went in the separate other direction that brought him to that trailer. Remember that? A similar thing happens with Dale Cooper here, right? That's why Carl says, "Where are you going?" He says, "I'm going over here." And there's a sense, too, of some kind of intuition. Is it the same reason of intuition or is it different? Who knows? But in any event, for both of these characters, for each of these characters, Chet Desmond and Dale Cooper, for whatever reason, they are drawn to this particular plot of the trailer park. So let's think about the possibilities in terms of why is this happening? We can interpret or we can further assess the sort of the powers of deduction and intuition, perhaps, of these characters respectively, including, of course, Dale Cooper. Now we bring him to this part, and this is where, yes, there's a trailer here. Of course, there's no more trailer there, and this is where we get information about who lived there from Carl. And according to Carl, we had an old lady and her grandson living there, and he also provides the name. And this is seems to be very significant, right? He says Chalfont. And he also provides some interesting information in addition, which is, in fact, again, I'm paraphrasing from Carl, right? We understand that, in fact, the people who had lived here before were also called Chalfont. Two Chalfonts. Weird, huh? And so this seems to me very significant indeed, right? Because if you recall, there is an old lady and a grandson that we had seen in a previous episode of season 1, right? In terms of the story with Donna and Meals on Wheels and Harold Smith. And one of the neighbors of Harold Smith, as we recall, was Mrs. Tremont. And Mrs. Tremont was living there with a young boy and her grandson, or someone that we might assume was her grandson. So we have an old lady and her grandson, the little boy living there, Mrs. Tremont. But what happened to Mrs. Tremont and the little boy a little bit later down the road, of course, when Donna makes the connection with the note from Harold and what Andy says, and in terms of J and M Solitaire, when Donna's there, right, during that time, she puts two and two together and she realizes that the Tremonts might have something to do with it. And so when Donna takes Agent Cooper there, what do we see? Lo and behold, we see another woman, but this woman is far from looking like anything that the old lady that we had met before. Looks like this is a completely different person. Identifies as Mrs. Tremont, but she says that she lives there alone and the like. And so there were, in fact, two Tremonts, in a manner of speaking, when we had encountered this aspect of the old lady and the boy back in the early season of Twin Peaks. So two Tremonts, Weird, huh? And of course, indeed, now we have the old lady and the grandson. And right, because we had also seen the old lady and the young boy. Where did we see them? We had seen them just previously, right, in the sequence involving Philip Jeffries, and then the sudden superimposition of what the place, this weird, unusual place, gathering of some sort, Garmonbozia, fella victim. And so, what is going on here, and where are our perspectives supposed to align in terms of our interpretation of who these characters really are? Is Carl speaking of the same old lady and the grandson that we have perhaps seen from these moments, even within Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me? Or could they be different characters altogether? Who knows? Who knows? They could be the same. They could be different. Again, similarities and differences. Who knows? But in any event, our minds are, I think, very much now, we are being asked, I think, to think, or we are given the opportunity to wonder and ponder and consider who, in fact, lived here in this trailer. And again, we are told Chalfont. And two Chalfonts, weird, huh? And indeed, too, if we are to recall that we had not seen, or Chet Desmond tried to reach for this ring, which seemed to be under this place where Carl Rod now says this is where the Chalfonts lived, and the ring and some mound of earth, and we have seen mounds of earth in other parts of Twin Peaks before, in terms of Donna and James and the locket, and also in terms of what we might see, what we have seen in past seasons and episodes with regard to what happened to Ronette and what happened to Laura, of course, and Bob. But and we might talk a little bit about that during the course of our Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me discussions, of course. But here again, the mound of earth and the ring. And the Chalfonts, and some connection with now the what seems to be a possible connection with people who now we know existed in this world, with the man from another place and Bob and some other figures that seem to be, or have the feeling of being somewhat maybe malevolent and nefarious. In any event, there seems to be some deeper connection possibly at work here, and perhaps what we had seen with the Harold Smith episode and the Meals on Wheels and J&M Solitaire maybe has more significance in the course of, say, the mythology of Twin Peaks, the Black Lodge, Bob, a man from another place, Mike perhaps, and others, more than we might have realized upon first watch of Twin Peaks in that particular sequence, indeed. And two, what is the significance if these are the same characters? What is the significance of the name Tremont and Chalfont? And indeed, what is the deal with two Chalfonts? Weird, huh? This is a remarkable set of events, and it goes by quite quickly, right? Because then at the precise moment immediately after, Dale Cooper asks about the car, because he sees in the distance a car, which he asks if that is Chet Desmond's car, and indeed it seems to be. So they walk over to that car, and it seems to be in the sunlight, so we can't see. But then what do we see scribbled across the windshield there? The glass. It's very eerie indeed, with the eerie sting of the music, which is "Let's rock" in this cursive red writing. Let's rock. Now, my dear friends, where have we seen this? Where have we seen this? We have seen this, or we have heard this. Let's rock, from or spoken by none other than the man from another place. The sequence early in the series, of course, where we have Dale Cooper in this room, somewhat older, or having the appearance of being somewhat older, and we have the man from another place, and he turns and he says in that reverse time speak, "Let's rock." So this is again flooding my mind and my ears and my heart with a lot of possibilities, information overload to the max, to say the least. But what do we make of this moment? Let's rock. It's also associated with the disappearance of Chet Desmond, of course, because it's on his car. At least it's on the vehicle that we understand to be Chet Desmond's car, according to Carl Rod. So, what do we make of this? Now, we had mentioned in the previous discussion of Fire Walk with Me, right, about what is the what is the MO? What is the modus operandi? What gives with this character who has been referred to as the man from another place? He seems to be, on the one hand, a character that is wanting to help Cooper, perhaps, at least when we remember a lot of the interactions that he had had with Cooper during the series. But now there are, and if that's the case, then what's going on here? Because he has been seen to be, again, this is a Formica table with this ring I thee wed, and he's speaking to, or he's speaking these words together with, or sitting at the same table as Bob. And so if we understand Bob to be a malevolent, evil villain, then does that mean that the man from another place is also a villain as well? Is his character also evil as well? We're not sure. Is it possible? It might be. Maybe he was evil all along. Who knows? And so that's one possibility as well. And Let's Rock too. Let's Rock seems to have had a kind of playful, a jazzy swing to it when it was first spoken back, way back when, during the early parts of season one. Indeed, one of the versions of the pilot as well, the international release feature version of the pilot, which again we'll talk about a little bit later. So it had that edge to it, which seemed playful and innocent enough, but now it has an air of the sinister. Let's rock. And so this is, again, a great twist. And again, it shows another great detail as to the duality of things going on here. Things that are similar yet different. Things that have a certain edge to it that might seem playful and like frolicky and innocent on the one hand. It now has a sinister edge, and it turns almost deadly and creepy within a given moment. And this, too, I think, is a great way of operating within the world of David Lynch. David Lynch has this unique and gift and quality and his genius to cinema, one of which being, of course, being able to turn these details that seem innocent at first glance and then expose them and examine them and reinterpret them in a way that feels very much like looking at it from a whole new perspective. And that whole new perspective can be very scary indeed. And that goes for a very simple phrase, simple and a great phrase like, let's rock. What does this mean here as well? So this is incredibly important, incredibly dynamic and fluid. And yes, the mysteries abound. What more answers lead to more questions. Let me put it that way. And two, let me go back to this idea of the prequel status of Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me. Right through the dark of future past, when the magician longs to see one chance out between two worlds. Fire, walk with me. So I mentioned this before, and I have to emphasize this again. I speak in the tone of, say, remember back in season one when, so season one was in the past because it was broadcast prior to the release of Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me. But that is already, I think, one of the great tricks. That's one of the great ways in which this film, Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me, operates, is because I talk about the past, but in fact, I'm talking about the future. Because those events that I'm talking about will not have occurred yet, or they will occur later on, because the chronology of the world of Twin Peaks, we understand, is such that this is a prequel that is happening before, or the stuff that we're talking about now is happening before those events have even of season one have even occurred yet. So what is going on here? So I'm talking about the past, but I'm talking about the future at the same time. Wow, already my mind is blown by that concept. And so Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me, you've done it again for me. You have blown my mind again. But this is also very significant because it also opens up the possibility of alternate universes, alternate timelines, and alternate realities. I should say that, again, similarities and differences, even alternate existences, even down to different characters. Perhaps one can say that Chet Desmond and Dale Cooper, even within the treatment of Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me, could be said from one perspective to be alternate takes on the same situation. And we have alternate takes on the same situation as well. Going back to, say, I mentioned the pilot. We have the broadcast version of the pilot, and also there's the international feature release version of the pilot. And those are very different takes on the same subject matter, more or less. But one can say, too, that even within the context of the pilot, we have two alternate versions or two alternate realities. And even here, we are going to be confronted with, or we're going to have more information about, excuse me, about different perspectives, different realities, different actors playing the same role, even, or maybe the same actor playing the same role, or maybe the same actor playing different roles, or maybe the same actor playing the same role, but the role is different depending on what part of the story of Twin Peaks we find ourselves in. And it has all to do with this idea of perceptions and realities and existences or non-existences, as the case may be, and how we perceive them. Excuse me. And duos and doubles and doppelgangers and the like, and how that figures in. We've already seen it already within the scope of this right here, right? Chow fonts, two chow fonts. Weird, huh? How many chow fonts are there? How many Tremonts are there? Is there two? Is there four? Is there more? What's going on here? Are we going to see them again? Who knows? We've already seen them in Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me during that sequence with and Philip Jeffrey, things that are superimposed over each other. And talk about alternate realities too, different realities imposed on each other at the same time. So it is all here, and we are left to contemplate and wonder this. And I love the sequence with Carl Rod and Fat Trout and Dale Cooper, which gives us the opportunity, I think, in a very contemplative way, to wonder and consider and think. Again, the possibilities are endless here, and what better way to do it? I mean, it's such a lovely way to do it in the comfort and in the company of these two characters, Carl Rod, as portrayed by the great Harry Dean Stanton, and of course Dale Cooper, as portrayed by the great Kyle MacLachlan. So let's rock indeed. Lots going on here, and two, right? What do we make of? Are we going to think about? Are we going to see the Ring again? Is what was going on here? Are we going to see Chet Desmond again? Are we going to see Sam Stanley again? What's going on? And indeed, are we going to see Dale Cooper again as well? We're not sure, because it seems like as he's then we fade to Wind River, and we hear the now again another bit of comfort, which is Dale Cooper speaking into the tape recorder for Diane, and now recounting some of the events of the investigation, which he seems to has reached a type of dead end, right? Because we understand that he's concerned about a number of things. First is the disappearance of Chet Desmond, and also he reminds us that this is one of Gordon Cole's Blue Rose cases. So this is also very important too, right? Because we've heard, of course, of the Blue Rose at the very start of Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, and Gordon Cole introducing this. And Chet Desmond seems to understand what this means. Sam Stanley doesn't understand, and perhaps we're not quite there yet as well, although we can always wonder what it could mean. But also, we understand that Blue Rose is something that Dale Cooper seems to appreciate the significance of, at least to a certain degree anyway. Gordon Cole's Blue Rose cases. So what does this mean? And what does Dale Cooper know about the Blue Rose? And what can we interpret the Blue Rose to mean? We'll have to wait and see if indeed it appears. It may or may not appear again. Who knows? But in any event, we have the introduction, or the reminding us of this being a Blue Rose case. And this is also, for whatever reason, a cause of concern or worry. Who knows? And that could be some indication of what Blue Rose actually means, or not. And to this idea of one of the grisly and quite terrible and disgusting details of the very sad death of the murder of Teresa Banks, which is the letter, of course, under the fingernail, which seems, again, it's a very chilling detail. And Dale Cooper then surmises that this could be the indication of a serial killer, and the serial killer, therefore, by definition of that phrase, serial killer, would be a killer that would strike again. But as the song goes, who knows where or when. So here we have and I just want to say just a number of things here too. Again, he says this idea about the killer may strike again. He's talking about the past, but we know that, in fact, perhaps the killer will strike again. So, but is it the same killer? Is it not the same killer? Or what is the circumstances involving who killed Teresa Banks? That has yet to reveal itself, of course. We may get our answers a little bit later during the course of Twin Peaks Fire Walk, and then we might get a better sense of how this connects into the world of Twin Peaks as we know it from seasons 1 and 2 in the pilot. But the time being, we do know that some death, very, very similar to that of Teresa Banks, will occur in the future because it already has occurred in the past. In terms of when season 1 and the pilot were broadcast and aired. So again, to darkness of futures past, the magician longs to see. One chance out between two worlds, fire walk with me. I should mention there as well, two worlds, different worlds, alternate worlds, different perspectives coming together. It's all within there. It was, and in fact, those words were given to us from the very beginning, right? In terms of an early season 1 episode, the quote unquote dream sequence of Dale Cooper, or if you're speaking of the international pilot version, those were in that part of that part as well. We got that message, or we got that poem or refrain from Mike. He told it to us from the very from the very get go, right? It was all there to begin with. It seems to me that holds the key, or a lot of keys to one I think very reasonable way of reading not just Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, but in fact the entire Twin Peaks universe. Right, future, past, two worlds. Right, Fire Walk with Me. So many contradictions going on at once, and so many things that add layer upon layer upon layer of contradiction upon contradiction upon contradiction, mystery upon mystery upon mystery upon mystery. This is the stuff of the brilliance and genius of work like Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, and indeed Twin Peaks writ large, and it's all here. And again, we know something's going to happen again. We know something is in the air. Not only do there's always music in the air, but there's also something of the mysterious and the eerie, and not quite sure what's going on. Questions, mysteries, right? And we've talked about so many mysteries that have occurred here, and so I do want to say that the appearance of Dale Cooper in this almost coda, if you will, to this first part of the film, because we can say that this is the first part of the film, because in fact, when we go, the next shot or the next scene or the next sequence will be a kind of time jump into the future. What we can glean from this, and what I can take from this every time I see it, the sequence, is that, again, one might think, or going into the film, I might have had, especially the first time going into the film, I might have had the preconceived notion that, oh, I'm going to watch something that is describing itself as taking place prior to the events of seasons 1 and 2 of Twin Peaks. Therefore, if I watch this, then I will probably get some of the answers that I have been asking myself as I've seen the series Twin Peaks, because you'll see sort of the origin story or the beginning, that type of phraseology, of course, is very prevalent. And I might have had that preconceived notion, but every time I watch Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me in this way, I'm reminded of, again, this idea of questions, answers given to questions, but those answers leading to more questions. And indeed, every time we think we might see an answer, we get another question. And so there are questions, answers, questions, answers, questions, answers, questions. And it just goes on and on and on. And perhaps the last point is a type of question. But we shall see where the end point, as it were, of Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, this work itself, will take us when we get to the final sequences of this work. But let me just say that watching the early part, the early stuff with Teresa Banks and Deer Meadow, I must say that there are certain questions from my viewing of Twin Peaks, the series so far, that have been answered, but more questions abound. And indeed, that's the stuff of why this show and why this film are so compelling, and why I keep coming back to it again and again and again and again. And that brings us to 1 year later and Laura Palmer. And wow, what a story this is.